I believe that a software is only as good as the hardware it runs on. And to prove my point, I decided to put MOZA R12 against SIMAGIC Alpha Mini. And since both are close in terms of advertised torque output, people take that metric as a deciding factor. My goal is to shine the light in areas which often goes unnoticed. Now without further ado, let's begin. SIMAGIC Alpha Mini is often pitched against MOZA R9 or R12 whenever the need arises for a 10-ish Newton meter wheelbase. And a higher torque output has always been a major deciding factor. It's like choosing a Toyota Hilux over Mazda Miata just because Hilux has more horsepower. While I do have my preferences, I would like to approach this topic on a more objective manner. While both of these bases fall under the 10 Newton meter segment, they are not at all similar. Both of them are different by heart. SIMAGIC uses a custom 5-pole pair servo motor and R12 uses an 8-pole pair motor. 5-pole pair means 5 north and 5 south poles, and 8-pole pair means 8 north and 8 south poles. Without overcomplicating this, let me put it this way. Both the bases have different motors and are constructed in a different manner. But when it comes to servo motors, lower pole count is always better as it will rotate at a much higher speed. The higher the speed of the motor, the more range of control the software can have over it while delivering the force feedback. Another difference is in the peak torque and holding torque. A lot of people see the advertised peak torque output and simply assume that whichever base has a higher torque figure is the better one. But I think we have a special case on our hands here. On paper, the R12 should destroy the Alpha Mini. But that is not the case at all. Upon testing both the bases on max torque output, I found Alpha Mini to be stronger than R12. And it is baffling considering SIMAGIC advertises this as a 10 Newton meter base. I don't have any concrete data to support my claims apart from what I have felt. But I do think that all the speculations and rumors about Mini being a 13 Newton meter base could be true after all. A lot of people on Reddit have expressed their opinions about this base feeling a bit too strong for 10 Newton meter. So far SIMAGIC hasn't said anything about this, and the only test to support this claim has been posted on iRacing forums. It is quite evident that not only the Alpha Mini surpassed the 10 Newton meter mark, it sustained the torque all the way to 13 Newton meter. So does this mean that manufacturers deliberately choose not to disclose the true peak and holding torque? Perhaps, but that is for you to decide. And now on to the final difference. Let's take a look at these circles. Both of them represent a full 360-degree revolution, where this one is divided into 32,768 parts and this one is divided into 262,144 parts. These parts are called pulses. Now this one has more pulses, meaning this one has the ability to catch finer details compared to this one. And providing you with those details is exactly what an encoder is responsible for. It is used to determine the position and the speed of the motor. And the encoder has a resolution. The higher the resolution, the finer the details it can deliver. R12 uses a 15-bit encoder as opposed to Alpha Mini's 18-bit. I did confirm from MOZA and R12 is indeed a 15-bit base and not an 18-bit as mentioned here in this page. MOZA does offer 18-bit encoder on R16 and R21. So a more fair comparison would have been R16 versus the Alpha or R21 versus the Alpha U. But as of now we have R12 which is 15-bit, and compared to that 18-bit has 8 times more details. The purpose of the diagram is to tell you that 18-bit encoder has the ability to pick up finer details when compared to 15-bit. While the Alpha Mini might not be delivering 8 times the details, the increment on the details will be objectively better. But encoder is not all that matters, as the quality of motor is an equally important aspect. And judging by how both of these bases feel, Alpha Mini takes the cake in terms of overall smoothness. The thing is that hardware-wise Alpha Mini has the edge, but it does not make R12 a bad choice. And we have yet to cover software and force feedback. Although I did say that software is only as good as the hardware it runs on. But let's not play favorites and jump to any sort of conclusions. There is no such thing as software or hardware being more important than the other. Neither are important, but both are vital. They cannot exist without the other. With that said, let's start with SIMAGIC's software. If you remember, in this video I mentioned that I wasn't a huge fan of their software as it was buggy and some of the terminologies were confusing, including their tooltip. Their weakness has always been their software and it was behind in a lot of areas. But after a lot of constructive criticism, they decided to redesign it. So now we have SimPro 2. It's a lot better compared to 1.3 which was in beta. There's a lot of stuff here which should have been present from the very beginning. But let's not dwell on the past. We finally have an auto update feature which can now update the software and the firmware. The UI is redesigned and it has a bunch of themes to choose from. Some of the terminologies have been better renamed to understand what it actually does. For example, vehicle suspension has now been renamed to feedback detail. Also, the tooltip explains the sliders a bit better now. Some other features have been added such as being able to limit the torque output of the base, sharing profiles and better animations. But the thing which I like the most is this inbuilt guide and the FAQ section. It helps to set up the base just in case there are some troubles or issues. So you don't have to go looking for answers on Reddit or Discord. Also, you can visit their socials directly from the app. So far, I'm liking what they're doing with the software. It took them a while to catch up, but I'm glad that they did. I haven't been able to find any bugs or crashes so far, and I hope they further improve upon it. But the one thing which I should give credit to SIMAGIC for is for making their bases compatible with SnowRunner. Yes, I know it's not a sim, but sometimes goofing around in an arcade game can be fun too. I miss playing this game when I switched to R9 just to find out that almost no other DD supports it. Except Fanatic, until SIMAGIC announced that they now support it. Also, Forza Horizon 5 is now plug and play. It works wonderfully on my Alpha U, but not on the Alpha Mini. I had assistance for this from SIMAGIC's team over the call and we tried to figure out what went wrong. And actually on the Alpha Mini, other devices were messing up the device ID order, so the force feedback never worked. I was told that Forza Motorsport got an update regarding this particular situation, so missing force feedback may not be the case in that game. Somehow my Alpha U retained the device ID and kept my other devices in line. Maybe they are scared. Anyways, the process to set up Forza was really simple. Fire up the game and assign the controls. No VJoy or any other emulator. But again, it is Forza Horizon 5. Getting anything to work with it can be a bit of a pain. And such is the story with MOZA. Forza Horizon 5 is a hit or miss here too. Except the process of setting it up is quite literally a pain. But that is not all that MOZA has to offer. Because I have always loved their software and they have remained consistent in providing users with a nice experience. The UI is clean, it has 2 color modes, the terminologies are clear and easy to understand. And the best bit about their software is their force feedback equalizer. If there is a particular frequency that you prefer to fine-tune, you can spend some time here. As much as I appreciate this feature, I haven't been able to find a good use for this. One other thing which I find interesting is the hands-off protection. It is a feature which I believe is unique to MOZA's software as of now, but I honestly think that everyone should implement this one. Both manufacturers are doing a great job, and SIMAGIC's team has shown me some promise. I would love to see what else they come up with, as their software wasn't particularly strong. Alright, so just in case you might have skipped directly to this part, please keep this in mind that force feedback is highly subjective, and you may or may not agree with me. You may not even feel the things which I have felt. So whatever I have to say, take it with a grain of salt. Now let's start with the R12. It has good amount of torque, but some of the details I felt were a bit too artificial. Some of the things which I wanted to feel were not as crisp, while others were overly pronounced. Before I go on about the things which I did not like, I would suggest you keep an open mind. Now first and foremost would be oscillations. I know that oscillations are generally considered normal and wheelbases are violent by nature, but I had a very different experience with R12. Oscillations can be caused by a lot of factors such as the game's feedback, the motor's filtering, weight of the rim, the inertia, the wheel return speed, damping, etc. The point is, I tried to find a sweet spot where the oscillations would be considered bearable, but I could not. These oscillations were mainly noticeable on track racing games such as Assetto Corsa and Automobilista 2. I personally haven't driven a race car, but I don't think a real life steering oscillates like this unless you have severely messed up your suspension components or maybe you have a flat tire. My experience revolves around standard road going cars, so I will be speaking in that regard. But if you have driven a race car, please correct me in the comments. So as I was saying, the oscillation does not kick in when you are holding onto the wheel, but as soon as you let go of it, the steering starts to motorboat.
Motorboat? You play the motorboat? You motorboat, you old sailor, you.
Sure, an argument can be made that why would I want to let go of the wheel in the first place if I'm racing? And I would agree with you. But sometimes I would want to relax my hands on a long straight for a little bit, without my car crashing into the very next thing which is close to me. You may also say that steering is oscillating because the roads are not quite as smooth and the minor bumps can upset the balance. And I tried reducing the torque, playing with inertia, wheel return speed and damping. But it still did not work out. I did not get a chance to test this one out, but one of my acquaintances pointed out that I should try to adjust the force feedback curve like this, so the oscillation kind of goes away. This solution is based on an R9. So if this thing worked for you, let me and others know about this. I believe that alongside the filtering, it could also be the fact that I was using the ES rim, which is 11 inches in diameter and relatively lightweight. Maybe using a heavier rim such as CS or KS would have yielded a different result. Or would it? But oscillation is not the only thing which I disliked about this bass, as I felt sudden jolts of peak torque. The information was being delivered to the bass about the road texture and the curbs, but instead of delivering them on a more progressive and subtle manner, it was rather sudden and very powerful. And they were really uncomfortable. For instance, if my car touched a sausage curb on really low speeds, the bass would deliver that particular feedback in a very harsh manner. I had an idea of the force I was applying to the wheel, but the jolt had me by surprise. To me, it felt unreal and overly digitalized. To solve this, I reduced the overall torque output. You can also play around with equalizer and road effects to mitigate this. Next up, I want to talk about the details. I had a bit of a hard time understanding when I'm understeering or when I'm oversteering, as I was accustomed to a different force feedback experience. And upon spending more time with R12, I did manage to feel these things, but I still wished for a bit of crispiness, I tried increasing the road effects, but it started to overpronounce the details. Now keep this in mind that different games output feedback differently, and you would feel different things on different bases because of the very nature of the motor inside. But when it comes to a track racing game, these are a requirement. I was also unable to feel the tire lockup on my settings. I could only get an idea of it when I heard a screeching sound. I tried a bunch of stuff and I felt like the bass lacked some details which the software was trying to make up for. Not that it's a bad thing, but like I said, the software is only as good as the hardware it runs on. Now on to the last bit, the force feedback kicking in late or disappearing at times. I only experienced it a couple of times, so I can't say that the bass is faulty. I suspect that it could be a firmware issue which could be patched, so nothing too serious about that. It might seem like I'm nitpicking needlessly, but I can assure you that my statements are a projection of my experience with the bass. These are simply my opinions. Feel free to drop yours in the comments. Now let's move on to the Alpha Mini. I'm running the firmware 185 here, which is in beta, as I'm in the insider program of SIMAGIC. It does not sound very super secret because it isn't. You can join the program too by joining the Discord server. So initially I thought it was feeling a bit weak as I was coming directly from R12. But very quickly I realized that the force feedback differences were miles apart. And the best way to describe the differences would be in terms of music. With Alpha Mini, it is like a good song with really nice mids, highs and lows, where you can hear the vocals clearly, the bass is good and the instruments are melodious. With R12, it is like funk. Yes, funk. Enjoyable at times, but mostly filled with repeated verses, aggressive bass, and mumble rap, sometimes in a language you're not familiar with. Is it good? Yeah. But you don't want to feel like a Sigma all the time, do you? Does not matter. The point is, with R12, the force feedback was a bit jerky and often jolty. It wasn't awful. It's just that I wished for it to be a little bit more progressive with feedback delivery. With Alpha Mini, I could feel the progression, and it could be because of the motor quality paired with an 18-bit encoder. But the details varying from smooth, weightless straights all the way to heavy corners where you can feel the lateral grip, the limits of the tires, understeer, oversteer, all of these were marginally better than the R12. Because of this, I was being a maniac around the Nürburgring in Sector 2. Now, oscillations are something which I did experience on Alpha Mini as well, but applying a bit of damping and inertia quickly solved it. The bass was still responsive to all the details, and to me, I was fast enough to react to most of the oops moments while pushing the car. Now, heating on MOZA and SIMAGIC basses has been quite the topic of discussion for a while now. Some users have been reporting force feedback fading after the heating on the R9, and I was expecting a similar story on the R12. But surprisingly, that was not the case. It got warm, but not hot. Alpha Mini, on the other hand, did get hot. Yes, but I did not experience any force feedback fading. I'm no expert, but maybe SIMAGIC's motor can run hot for long sessions without throttling. And for that, I would like to say that any product or machine running at 90 to 100% capacity is bound to get hot. It is normal. I'm not taking SIMAGIC's side here. I'm trying to tell you that any machine putting in all of its effort is not going to stay cool. Even a car's engine, when pushed to its absolute limits, will run hot. Some users claim that MOZA basses has experienced the reduction in overall force feedback after their bass is running hot for a given amount of time. It's just the bass's way to get the temperature in control. And when it fails to do so, the force feedback starts to fade away or disappear when things go out of control. This obviously depends on the construction and the limits of the motor, as every motor behaves differently. Now it is totally up to you to call this an issue or a precautionary measure. But if you need to understand this further, I recommend looking up thermal throttling or brake fade. Now moving on to the build quality. Both of these basses are fanless, like every other servo motor based DD. Aesthetically, the R12 looks like a cute little Abarth 500. It bears resemblance to the R9, but the tiny bass indicator which R9 had is now gone. And much like the R9 and the R5, it carries forward the heatsink design, which looks good, but I'm not really sure how much it helps with heat dissipation. If someone has any experience or claims regarding this heatsink design being functional, let me know in the comments. MOZA claims that this housing material is made out of aviation grade aluminium. As a person who has had a lot of experience with aluminium in general, I can say that this does not feel very different. MOZA hasn't described which aluminium alloy they used, so I'm going to say that this is just marketing. If proper aviation grade aluminium were used, it would have been written such as 6061T6 or 7075T6. But anyways, here's a sound test. The structure is quite compact and feels very solid. There is a plastic covering in the back where I saw some minor deformities. It seems like a minor issue with my unit, so yours might not even have it. The fit and finish is good, but could use a little attention to the detail. Now on to the Alpha Mini. Aesthetically speaking, I prefer the good old loaf of bread design, just like this and VRS and Simucube basses. Unlike MOZA, this is very basic, no-nonsense design. The simple logo and the product name on top is sufficiently mute for me. SIMAGIC claims that this is made from aluminium, and here's another sound test. I could not find any visible deformities and the fit and finish is great. Both bases are built very nicely and you can be the judge of it too. Granted, the sound test helped. When it comes to mounting options, MOZA offers bottom mounting only. It can be mounted on the table or can be side mounted with an optional bracket, but front mounting is not available. In fact, front mounting any MOZA bass is not possible. All major manufacturers offer front mounting, so hopefully MOZA implements it in their revised version of the basses. In SIMAGIC, however, it is possible to bottom, side and front mount it. No optional brackets are required whatsoever. Now moving on to ecosystem differences. Both MOZA and SIMAGIC offer a great variety of products to complete your ecosystem should you decide to go that route. Both have handbrake, pedal, a bunch of wheel and basses to choose from. I cannot side with either manufacturers as both have really appealing offerings. I do love MOZA GS and have used it extensively with my time on the R9. And I think I might have to get my hands on the FX Formula as it has got my attention. But recently SIMAGIC announced their hydraulic handbrake, which sounds as insane as it looks. I'm not really sure if someone would actually need a proper hydraulic handbrake, but if you do, they have it. MOZA is coming out with a truck rim which seems like a really great deal. And pedal wise, I think I'm gonna have to say that SIMAGIC is doing a better job, especially considering how modular their P1000s are. They now have a hydraulic kit and the haptic pedal reactors for extra immersion. As a matter of fact, they are so appealing that I might give up my Husingfeld sprints. As you can see, I could go on and on about the products each manufacturer offers, but truth be told, they are both great. Okay, so now on to the $1,000,000 question. Which one is better? Look, I can answer this in a line by simply naming either one of them. But that will be subjectivity and the answer will appear biased. So bear with me for a minute before I answer that. Let me try to justify my point. The thing is, a person moving from belt-driven bass to Fanatic or MOZA or SIMAGIC even will experience that particular bass only. Majority of the people don't get a chance to experience different products, so whichever bass they have chosen becomes best to them. In my opinion, software can be fixed, hardware cannot. And when talking about hardware, I do have to say that Alpha Mini is better than the R12. Not only it is a smoother bass overall, but also the details are more refined on it because of the higher encoder resolution. The force feedback was significantly better while feeling stronger. It also had good highs, mids and lows as opposed to R12, which was mostly highs and some mids. But that does not mean that R12 is inherently a bad product. Both are great, and I know people are going to bring out their pitchforks, but in my opinion, Alpha Mini is a better product. And with that said, I would like to conclude the video by saying that torque isn't everything. Don't let the advertised torque output be a deciding factor. Look at the hardware, do proper research, and remember, software is only as good as the hardware it runs on. That's been it. I've been Darth Snape, and may the downforce be with you.